It's all in sections. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. What did you think of the movie? So good, right? Ken, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm excellent.
I like your hat.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Actually, hang on.
You gonna let me get me wear one of those? Yeah, but I want the one with the words on it. Have you got one with the words on it?
Oh, I got the words on it. I'll get that. Well, anyway, you'll have to.
I'm gonna buy one anyway because you guys support me, so I'm gonna support you.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna load up my notes here. I'm sorry. This is very professional. So yeah, What the Darkness Cannot Extinguish: The Storytelling Madness of Clifford George. It's how did you meet Clifford in the first place?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Yeah. Let me think. I went to one of his exhibits years and years ago, and I think we had been communicating for some reason about some of the previous films like the Jury Squires and the. Well, I interviewed him for the Jury Squires film. Oh. But that was hang on. No, that was hang on. Let me go back. That was before that. So, I was at an exhibit and he came up to me and it was at Christina Parker's. And he's a big guy, and so I was just standing, and he came up to me, and he came right up to my face as he does. He came right up to me, and I'm like, "Yeah, what's going on, man?" And he's like, what did he say? He said, "I'm dark just like you." He said to me, and I was like, "Whoa, what's?" And then he proceeded to tell me a story which he can't remember to this day, about someone hanging himself in his father's barn. And I was like, okay, what's this guy all about? Who the hell is this guy, first of all? And what's he doing right up in my face? And what's with the comment about both of us being dark? So anyway, that was kind of interesting. That's where it started. And then I interviewed him for the Jury Squires film. And then we kind of kept hanging, bumping into each other and stuff, because I have my kids all grew up in Cupid, so we have the house in Cupid's, and Bob Buckingham has a house in Brigus, so we're friends, and we used to get together, and Clifford would be there, so we kind of got to know each other, and I thought, this is kind of an interesting fellow to do a doc on. He's not really, like, the Newfoundlandia really isn't my thing, but I felt it was, there was something more to than that, and the thing that I think that really got me, which I kind of figured out in the film, was that what's he really like? Because it's the same thing with the Christopher Pratt film. It takes a while to get beyond, the stories that you tell continuously and that facade that all of us put on. I mean, I've got one now, and you're using one. We're different, than we really are in public. Everybody is.
We're like this.
I know your dark secrets, so I won't talk about them right now, but maybe a film later on, we'll get to you. And so anyway, so I think that was kind of what attracted me to it, because he was like always telling these stories and very jovial, and I was thinking, okay, what is he really? What's he really like, and what's he covering up, and what's he hiding? And then we got into the Depression, finally, because I knew I had to get through all that. Same thing with the Christopher Pratt thing. The second day when I came back after viewing Christopher Pratt, he said to me, when you walked in here for the first time, he said, after we spoke for a while, he said, I knew you were going to be my psychiatrist. I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And that's what it basically is like, making, you have to be a very good listener when you're making a documentary, but you also have to know how to ask the right questions. And I always say, people often send me messages and ask me what camera I use, or the camera you do use is very complicated, because you do have a different camera for different projects. I've had a different camera for every one of my films I've made, because they have different palettes. Generally, like Canons look different from Sonys and stuff. But anyway, so I always say it's not about the camera, which it is kind of, but it's about the questions you ask, right? And developing the rapport. I'm popping this, sorry. And developing the rapport with the person, and that means listening a lot. And it means telling your own stories too. Like often when I'm editing, and with Christopher Darnell, and I probably mentioned this before in some interviews, he points to I'm talking, and you can see, look at the audio, you know, and this is, he says, this is you talking. Look, this is you talking here. And he said, this is the person talking here, answering, and this is you talking here. And and I said, well, that's how I get this, right? By doing this. Because you have to connect with the person you're interviewing, and in a big way, to get them to open up and speak. And it's kind of like developing a friendship, but you can't be too much of a friend either, right? Which is kind of like a psychiatrist, I guess.
And what like this is what I mean. This is the fourth type of this type of film that you've done, right? Like the kind of extended biography, Newfoundland biography.
On artists, yeah, for some reason.
Yeah.
I have no idea why. It's because I don't understand. I don't understand it. I think the reason is, I don't really know what the reason is. I guess I hang around with them and find them or something, or they find me. But
he came up to you and said that you
exactly.
had the darkness.
And towering
maybe
over me and like imposing himself upon me and like frightening the shit out of me, you know, like at the same time. So it's kind of interesting. Way to go for a ride with that.
No, but so this is the fourth one of this kind of series. But like, I noticed. I mean, I've seen all of these movies and I love them all.
Thank you.
But this one is like I hear much less of you.
Yeah. There was I cut out a lot more of myself in this. Yeah.
And was that a conscious choice for you, or was that like, were you holding back, or were you just like?
No, I wasn't holding back. I was giving them hell all the time. I don't know. Sometimes when you ask a question or when you use footage, you have to put your own voice in there. Otherwise, you don't understand what's going on. So maybe I wasn't doing that as much this time. It wasn't conscious for me not to be in there, because I'm always in there. More so in the Christopher Pratt film than any of them, I think, because we were traveling on the road together for 10 days. So we hear us, you know, having fun and being mean to each other and stuff a lot in that one. But so it wasn't conscious, no, I don't think.
I guess, yeah, with Clifford, was it different than the other people in that way, where you had to give them, like you had to prompt him slightly less than some of the other people?
Well, like I said, you know, Clifford just doesn't shut up, so you don't have to prompt him to do anything, really. You just got to prompt him to shut up, really, and say, no, I want to know, like, what's really going on. And like I said, again, you got to get, like, he says in the film, like, he contradicts himself so many times in the film, which is really, like, you know, well, that didn't really affect me, but I think about that every day, you know, like, but it didn't mean anything to me, you know, and then, but, you know, just something you go through, but, you know, I never forgot that, you know. It's just like, ooh, what's going on, man? Like, what's really happening?
That's really cool, yeah.
Yeah, and really, it's kind of like you gotta get in, and so, and another thing, too, I did with this thing, which is really different, and I don't know if you were going to ask this later, but I'll jump ahead, maybe, is that I actually costumed this, right? Which I've never done, and I've never, like, in a directorial point of view, this was like the biggest film I've ever done. It was like 4 years, even though COVID got in between. We're still doing stuff in between there too, but it was a really big film. So I'd get him to come and wear different costumes every time he came, and then the Santa thing was kind of discovered, and I didn't know what I was going to do with that, but eventually it turned out, because you don't know where you're going when you make a documentary, right? You have people sometimes ask about what's your artistic vision for a film when you're applying for grants and that kind of thing. And I kind of say, you know, you don't really know where you're going with a documentary, right? And the Santa thing, I just wanted to shoot him in Santa because he did that and dressed up out around there. But eventually Santa became a metaphor for, like, never dying, right? Which is the kind of the ending of the film, The Man Never Dies, you know, because you're telling stories and because you're captured on film and everything, you know, that's Santa basically, right? And him Santa going off in the sleigh at the end. So, yeah, so it was a much bigger film from a director point of view, and also staging him telling his own story.
Yeah, were you scripting him there?
Yeah, I wrote all that. Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
yeah.
Really? Okay.
Well, see, I'd done all these interviews already, so I knew the answers to the questions. So then I made the questions, right? Or I did the preface to what was coming next. So we shot that, me and Kelly, in Robert Burgess's place out in White Way. It's that room is like all preserved, and it's all exactly the way it was from the 1800s. Yeah. And so we put him in there and then came up with that idea. I don't know when in the film I came up with that idea, but it was a nice thread to bond everything together, and another kind of layer in storytelling, you know.
And when he's dressed when he's dressed up in these different characters, does he take on these different attributes? Like take on these different attributes, or like
Not really for the costumes, no.
act differently, or
The Santa, yes.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, that laugh.
And he's
Oh
the
my
perfect,
God, it's
he's
so
the
haunting.
perfect Santa. I mean, I've done portraits of him and like sold them across Canada. Like that's one of the things I did early on. I was like, oh, I'm gonna take some pictures of you as Santa, and everybody's like, oh, that's the Santa. That is Santa. And so people would order the pictures of him and stuff. So he was a good Santa. He wasn't a bad Santa. He was a good Santa.
He was a good Santa. Can you tell me about the title? Like, how did you settle on that?
And that extremely long title that you don't like.
I don't no. I'm not gonna say anything bad about it. I like it.
Ellen always says whenever this is my longest one yet. By how many characters? You counted them.
I did count at one point, but
he made he actually, I think I probably do it on purpose because he made a comment once at the film festivals that I don't like the double titles with the hyphen, with the hyphen, and then so I know, but you have to explain them. You have to have a title and you have to tell who's in it. So. You want me to explain what the...
No, I'm genuinely interested. Like the
okay.
Yeah.
What the darkness cannot extinguish. Well, it's basically storytelling and as he says in the film, color, and that's how you get through stuff, and humor too. I mean, you either get especially in Newfoundland, either you get a sense of humor or you die, right? In this place, look outside. I mean, Jesus, how long has this been going? How long has this been going on? The gray day. It's the longest gray day I can remember. So yeah, what the darkness cannot extinguish is about color and about storytelling, and filmmaking, I guess too, because the darkness can't kill those things, right? And he says at the end too, the one thing I do fear is the dark, but he came out of the depression with color. That's what got him. The pain became the color, as he said, which is interesting. I don't know if that's always works, but. Worked for him.
Yeah, you doubted him on when he that he was trying to cover it up or something, but it seemed like it was genuinely helping him. So
Yeah. And so that's what the title is, I guess.
But the second part, the storytelling madness of Clifford George.
Well, I wanted madness in there somewhere with him,
Is it a riff on the madness of King George?
No.
No, okay. No, not at all.
Just madness.
Okay.
Because he is mad as a hatter, so in a good way, like we all are.
Yeah. How do you, when you're working on a doc like this, how do you get people to open up to you? Like, how do you gain that trust in someone?
Yeah. I don't know. People do that and just start talking to me. I don't know why. It's like I did a film on called The Drinking Life about daytime alcoholics daytime drinkers, I guess, at Peter Easton's pub. And Conan Coates, who is the owner there, came up to me after he saw it and he said, I've known those people for 20, 30 years. I said, I've never heard any of those stories. But when you connect, I don't know, I just connect to people. And the thing is, when I made that film too, I went in there and I knew a bunch of the people in there. Either they drank with my father, or I drank with them when I was younger and stuff like that. So I connected on that level. But again, you're saying about how do I connect? It's like again, this is me talking, right, in the audio, and this is the person talking, and this is me talking, because you have to connect and find and tell stories that will ingratiate you to them. Right, and also connect on common threads and find those common threads. To say, oh yeah, I was from, I went through that, or I went through this, or that person, and then you get on and laugh a lot. Humor is like it. I mean, humor on connecting with people, and humor in a film is very important. Like if you look at that film, you can look at the beats. There's beats in that film where you have humor, right? Because that's what will connect you to people in the audience the most. And tears. Like I always try to have some emotion, and that's hard. Laughter is hard too, but with Clifford it wasn't that hard, And Clifford's daughter too. I mean, she was funny, I mean, Allison's funny as hell, and just her laugh alone, she's the color. So you always have to have color. You always have to have what I call the wild card. two in the film, right? In Jerry Squires, it was Stuart Montgomery, and I can't remember them all, but in this one it was Allison, because you always have that kind of person that you don't know what's going to happen or what they're going to say or what they're going to do, and people attract that. It's a very interesting concoction, putting together a documentary. You don't realize how complicated it is. It's like anything you do. You don't if you do any project for a long time, it could be construction, it could be anything. It could be something, a craft, or it could be you make a big project, and you kind of function on intuition, I think, a lot of the time. Eventually, if you do it long enough. I write books as well. I wrote a book, Blackstrap Hawk. It took me 15 years, and people say, "Oof," and I said, "Yeah, well, I just started it, and then it was finished."
It was done when it was done.
Right, and it's just that, I don't remember doing it, and I look back and go, what the fuck did I do that for? And this fucking 1,000-page book, but like I said, it's intuition. You don't really know. I don't think you're not really aware of what you're doing a lot of the times in creating anything. I don't think. You just do it by I've worked in construction too. I built a couple of houses, or was in part of building houses, and you do it almost instinctively, and then you'd walk away from it, look at it and go, wow, this is something that's going to be around for a very long time if you look after it properly, and it was very complicated. I don't remember doing it, and there's a building.
So just bit by bit.
Yeah, it's all just like that.
Yeah.
And the same way with Clifford George. So many times I was out to his house, and mostly looking for a free meal. It was worth it to go out there. Could Shirley cook me something up, get some fresh fish or whatever.
Pancakes.
Yeah, and some pancakes and bacon and all the stuff, all the bad stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of interviews, and he'd come into the studio, and I'd tell him to come into the studio and wear something different every time, and tell the same story so I could intercut them. And with the stories, where I was struggling with what story to put in. Because he told me so many stories, right? As you can see from the cut-ups in the film, those were all full stories, which I have. Mm-hmm. So I had to listen to those all the time, right? And after a while, you go, ugh. But now I'm saying, okay, how am I going to show anything of these stories, because they're really long?
Right.
So then I said, okay, I'll do an intercut on many of them, as much as I can, and try to actually make a story or some kind of a story out of them when you put them all together, that was a lot of fun doing that, but a lot of work. The edit on that was the biggest edit I've ever done, and I usually work closely with Christopher Darlington. I have on all my films, except for The Drinking Life, which I cut myself. But this one I cut about 90%, because it just took so much. I didn't have the money, basically, to be paying. It's expensive. And then I'd take it down to Christopher every now and then, and we'd sit down, and he'd give some input, and then I'd go back, and I'd go at it for another month or something, it was a long journey, but it was fun editing, because I had to come up with editing too. You have to come up with this, the best style that's going to represent the person, right, in the thing, and it was figuring out how to cut that with everything, just like Clifford, basically all over the place, and all the things that he does, the horses and the storytelling and the painting. So you had to do this kind of weaving and intercutting with all these storylines going through. The kids with the horse and the cart, and the ponies, and then all the threads, the house, the haunted house, and all these different threads of the story that you weave together to make it look like it's not woven, it's not just stuck together. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you have to go back and forth, and people have to make that leap in their head through time through all these different storylines, and hopefully it all flows together and doesn't.
Seemed good to me.
Thanks.
I wanted to open it up to anybody. Does anybody have any questions for Ken? Or I can think of one. I can ask one, and then you can think of one. But what do you hope viewers take away from this movie?
Yeah. The big thing one of the main things why I wanted to do this was because, I agree with Clifford too about, how storytelling is disappearing, and and it all happened, when electricity came and when radio came, and I wrote a book basically based on that whole thing, the town that forgot how to breathe, which is based on the ghosts disappearing and all that kind of stuff and why they disappear, and it's all about technology shredding the spirits. So I was already on the kind of same wavelength as Clifford on that, and so he talked about Newfoundland disappearing, the houses disappearing, storytelling disappearing. So that's basically what the film is about, is trying to hang on to those things, and and about telling your own stories, right? I mean, it's interesting how we go home and we watch a movie, right? And everybody, you go home from work, you watch a movie. Oh, what are we going to watch tonight? You're just living somebody else's life, right? It's really strange, and I think it may be more of a North American phenomena than in Europe, where everybody just watches movies all the time and television all the time, and that's it. So you're going home and you're watching someone's life, and you're not living a life, you're watching somebody else's life. It's a vicarious insanity, right? But it's also entertaining, and sometimes you're just too tired and you just want to watch something, right? And that could be artful or it could be crap, but either one of them is good, and so that's why I was interested in, because that kind of, this is what, this is important. It's like the horses, saving the horses, the same thing. It's storytelling, right? Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of stuff in about the horses, and I cut it out in the end. Like, what's the difference between eating a horse and a cow and all this kind of stuff, right? Which, because there is no difference, and that's where the line came from. You put a name on something, you make it sacred, right? But there is all this history to the Newfoundland horses, and if that resonance of everything that they did, that makes them greater than a cow, right? Yeah. And that's foolish, really, but it's also true at the same time. There is this kind of it's an animal. We're supposed to eat them, right?
Really, of any of the subjects that he talked about, like any of the subjects that he covered, the ponies had the most kind of gravitas. He just turned serious.
Yeah.
When he talks about them.
Yeah, I never noticed that. Yeah, and he kneeled down. Yeah. Right, in one of the shots. Yeah, which I love that shot.
Yeah,
that kneels down. It's a very sacred thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Really
and it's
beautiful.
true. I mean, and his worship of the horses and how much he lost. There's a whole backstory to those horses. I mean, he was involved deeply in Newfoundland horses, and all this crap happened, right? Which really, anyway, I won't get into all that. It was a long time ago, but he went through a lot trying to save those ponies. And he did, because as he said, there was 60 horses left. You're getting pretty low then. Yeah. In a species, or whatever it is.
Anybody have a question?
No question is too stupid.
I don't have a question.
Yeah.
I just want to say I thought the film was really beautiful.
Thank you.
It was very well edited also. I appreciate what you just said about how you edited all these jokes, etc. But the visuals were just really...
Thank you. Yeah, it was easy. It was good to shoot. It was fun to shoot. I shot it, and I shot it on a not a great camera, believe it or not. I shot it on a Handycam, a Sony Handycam, and it was a crossover. But I shot some of it on a Canon. The stuff in the old building where he's dressed up as a storyteller, I shot that on a Canon. Different palette, you can tell. When you want to have something really rich and look old, the Canon is the way to go, because it's really kind of the sensors have a really they're really earthy, right? They have those dark tones and stuff, right? It makes it really rich. And the Nikons are they're not good for shooting on. They're kind of got a green yellow thing going on. I don't know. People pick them for different visuals. I guess we see differently. And the Sony is more like a Canon. The newer Sonys. I just got a new Sony for shooting a film on Stan Hill, and that's a really rich. It's a very rich camera, because he's an indigenous carver in Conn River.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is that, do you have any projects coming up? And
well, that's it. On Stan Hill, and I've got a film on Jonathan Hanouk, who was killed by the guards in
right.
Well, not killed by the guards in Her Majesty's.
Died
was
HMP.
Yeah, exactly. They were accused of killing him, and then they were acquitted. And it started out being a film on Regula Schul, who he was accused of killing in Labrador, who was a missionary, an elderly missionary. I started that, and then it got really complicated, because Then he got, he died, and it's like, so that's a really big documentary. That's like a big feature. And I've got one on Matt Barter, who was banned from campus by
Oh, yes.
the president, who's now gone, for holding up a sign in protest. And Kelly's got Jada Lee,
Yes. Yep.
the superstar. Sports. She's only, what, 17, is she? Already in the Baseball Hall of Fame, which is pretty good. So that's going to be really different. So Kelly's going to do it, but I'll be involved in that and kind of as a mentor too. But it'd be interesting doing sports. I've never done anything like that.
Lots of great visuals.
Yeah. Lots of nice, pretty shots, slow motion,
Yep.
hearing the wind, balls flying, all that good stuff.
The heightened drama and
Yeah.
tension. Well, thank you very much, Ken.
Thanks.
This is really lovely. Do you have anything else you want to say, or?
No, anybody got any other quick question?
Yeah.
I want to say that the film is not just stunning visually, the film is stunning how you capture the individual. I've known Cliff for over 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
The film does an marvelous job of capturing personality. I can only imagine what the editing was like, because I've done the 10-minute drop the cliff scene that I was 3 hours later. So
Yeah. You had to, and like I said, there's a lot of shut-ups, Same thing with Christopher Pratt. Was the same thing. Like, I heard that story 10 times. I don't want to hear it again. Just don't tell me that. Tell me something different. Okay, and that's what you got to do sometimes, right? And that's how you get it. And they go, oh, because it becomes like, it's kind of like Psychiatrist Father, kind of like, punish, you know what I mean? And and then praise, and it's just like parenting. Like, it's just weird, right? And then you become friends too. Like, I had dinner with Clifford, like after a couple days after the premiere, and it was completely different. It was like, oh my God, I can just sit down and and have a chat, and it was like, and he was different too, right? And you just relax, and you're like, oh, I don't have to go get the camera now, and oh, hang on now, and pop the camera. So, but thanks, yeah, it was a lot of fun capturing him, and as I said, the editing was the most important for capturing him properly, because if it wasn't edited properly, it would never have done it. Well, not properly, because I don't know if I did it properly, but I kind of did. But to do it to reflect him, that was the most important thing, I think, for this film, more so than any other films I've ever done before. But thanks, thank you,
Thank you.
thank you. It's always good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Love you,
too.
baby.
I do. I
Yeah.
do. I love you too. Thank you all for joining us. Yeah, and if you want to see it again, you can come on Sunday.
Bring your friends. Bring
3:30.
20 friends.
And we have a full day of programming tomorrow. A screening at 1 p.m., a screening at 3:30, and a screening at 8 p.m. And they're all wall-to-wall amazing films. So be sure to take a look at the program and see if you're interested in anything. And we also have our Friday night party is happening right now at Bannerman Brewing, and you're all welcome to join us over there. So thanks. Have a good night.